Stephen King's It is an epic novel, not what you'd expect from a premise that sounds like a straightforward horror. Some kids meet a psychotic killer clown. But the book takes place over 2 time periods, separated by 27 years. The clown is much more than he seems, a shapeshifter who conjures your worst nightmares. How is that possible? Most horror tales wouldn't feel the need to explain. Usually it boils down to something like this. Supernatural evil does as supernatural evil does. But King actually delves into a lot of mythology, bordering on science fiction to explain much of it. On top of all that, the story is an ensemble piece. So yeah, one 2-hour and 12-minute movie wasn't gonna cut it. That's why 2017's It was followed by 2019's It Chapter 2. But with these movies, Andy Muschietti made a crucial change to the book. The original story jumped back and forth between past and present. For the movies, instead they split the time periods in half. So the first movie is all about the kids, and the second movie is mainly when they're grown up, with a few flashbacks to fill in the blanks. Does this change serve the story, or irrevocably harm it? Let's find out. If you need a refresher on the first movie, check out my review of that one. The movie begins with a reminder of when Beverly was in the Deadlights and what she saw in them, the losers, older but back here, and then Bill's oath they all took. If it comes back, they will too. 27 years later, there's still a rot in Derry. Not just the clown, but people too, like this group of bullies at the carnival. The sight of 2 men together is too much for them. It starts with angry words, but quickly escalates into a beating, which only ends once they've tossed Adrian off the Derry Street Bridge. And it isn't over for him quite yet. Beaten and bleeding, he floats in the river until he's grabbed by a clown with glowing eyes, and that clown is hungry. If Chapter 2 is about growing up and leaving childhood behind, this scene definitely sets the stage by focusing on a very real and cruel act of violence. In fact, Stephen King based this on a real incident where 23-year-old Charlie Howard was murdered by 3 teens in 1984 in Bangor, Maine, the town which inspired King's fictional town of Derry. This is a more grounded violence than the more fantastical sort we saw in Chapter 1, setting the stage for a darker, more mature tale. Mike Hanlon knew this would happen, that it would come back. That's why he often sits next to the police radio, waiting. Tonight, he finally hears it. Reports of a dismembered body. As for the other losers, they all left Derry years ago. Bill Denbrough is a popular writer, popular enough he's working on a WB lot for a film adaptation. People love his work, except his endings. Eddie Kaspbrak is a risk analyst who married the splitting image of his mom. Actually, she is played by the same actress. Richie Tozier is a stand-up comedian, of course. Ben Hanscom, no, not that guy. This guy, though also kind of that guy. He played young Ben in the 1990 miniseries. He's a successful architect, and he carries a folded paper in his wallet, the page from his yearbook signed by one person, Beverly Marsh. As for Bev herself, she is not doing well. Like Eddie, who married his mother, she married the image of her father. This one is just as possessive and abusive. None remember Derry or what happened with Pennywise. It all faded after they left. But when Mike calls them and reminds them of the oath to come back, flashes of it return. The scar on Bill's hand hurts. Eddie crashes his car. Richie throws up and bombs on stage. As for Stanley Uris, after he gets the call, he heads to the bath, neatly folds his clothes, and picks up a razor. The opening act of this movie has a definite novelty to it. It's the fun of seeing familiar characters all grown up. Even if you knew the casting beforehand, there's still a curiosity in seeing how the adult actors will portray the characters. And there's fun in seeing where they all end up, which makes the darker parts hit harder, like Beverly trapped in a cycle of abuse. And of course Stanley, who couldn't stomach going back. Speaking of going back, flashback. Remember when Henry Bowers got pushed down the well?
Holy shit!
Well, turns out it didn't kill him. He walked home where he was promptly arrested for killing his father. Now he can be found at Juniper Hill, an asylum for the mentally insane. Today he gets a visitor from a red balloon and an undead Patrick Hockstetter, who gives Henry back his old knife, the one he stuck in his father's neck 27 years ago. In Derry, the losers gather for the first time since all the way back then. Memories slowly trickle back, and it's like old times. Things take a darker turn when they remember it, and Mike helps them remember more. There was an evil clown, and it's back. Mike needs their help to get rid of it, for good this time. That's when things take a strange turn. Their fortune cookies contain one word each. When put in the right order, guess Stanley could not cut it. The other fortune cookies come alive to birth nightmarish creatures. They fight back against those creatures until the hostess returns and finds them fighting nothing, just trashing her restaurant.
Is everything all right?
Yeah, can we get the check?
It's a nice punchline to the scene. It's funny and emblematic of a broader issue with the movie. It's a lot funnier than it is scary. Think about the setup. We just spent an entire movie, the first It, establishing that the monsters haunting these kids are just manifestations of it. Its power comes from their belief in the monsters and from keeping them apart to keep them scared. Well, they came together and defeated it. Yes, it apparently lived, but they won the battle, and now they're back together again, but older, and by the rules of the first movie, less vulnerable. Because remember, adults didn't see any of this stuff because belief is part of the magic of childhood. So the odds are stacked against the effectiveness of the threat. On top of that, the characters make for a fun ensemble, and Bill Hader, especially as Richie, keeps things funny, even as the scares are happening, further stacking the odds against anyone in the audience genuinely getting frightened. And then, the same problem as the first movie, CGI monsters. Personally, I see little cartoon monsters with baby heads, and my brain registers them as not there at all, and in no way a real threat. It's not scary. But I actually quite like this sequence overall. It's one of the best in the movie. When they first meet at the restaurant, the cast has instant chemistry. I found the first movie incredibly relatable, remembering what it was like to hang out with friends over the summer, and I find this just as relatable. It perfectly captures the vibe of meeting up with those same old friends, but now as adults. Before the not-so-scary scares, there is at least a sequence with a lot of anxiety. When they open the fortune cookies to find those individual words, the dawning realization that it's a message from Pennywise, while they scramble to put them all together, the characters talk over each other, all trying to solve the puzzle at once. It becomes an anxious scene, until Beverly cuts through it all like a knife, when she sees what's written on her fortune, Stanley. And that completes the puzzle. It's heart-wrenching when the group knows what happened to him before they really know. It makes for such a roller coaster, joyful reunion, anxiety-ridden confrontation with the past returning to haunt them, and then sadness. On the way out, they bump into a kid, clearly sent by Pennywise.
Hey, Richie! The fun's just beginning, right?
But Richie isn't going to take that crap.
Think this is funny? Think this is some sort of game? Fuck you, alright? Fuck you! I'm not afraid of you!
But turns out the kid is just a fan, quoting a line from Richie's act. Outside, Beverly calls Stanley's home and learns the news that he's gone. They all decide to leave town. None feel up to the task of facing Pennywise, especially after that news. Except Bill agrees to stay just a little to hear Mike out. While the losers' reunion comes to a premature end, Pennywise is back to his old tricks, luring a little girl under the bleachers at a baseball game, feeding on her. Henry is back to his old tricks too, using his knife and Patrick's help to escape the facility. Like the opening scene, this continues the movie's darker sense of cruelty. Pennywise's first two victims, the man in the opening, and this little girl, are two people who have already suffered bullying at the hands of others. This girl thanks to a mark on her cheek. Pennywise promises he can blow it away if only she gets close enough. Skarsgård is as effective as always. He's about to blow on her cheek. He counts 1, 2, and then his face goes slack, his eyes go weird, and he drools. It's that inhuman quality. The mask slips, giving way to hunger. Henry is back. I wonder if his subplot will have more of a point in this movie. It won't. But at least for a little, it incorporates one of my favorite horror concepts that I've only seen a few times: the friend corpse. A dead friend returns to the main character and isn't presented as a ghost, but as a real physical presence. It always feels weird, and sometimes a little funny. It immediately reminded me of An American Werewolf in London, where they do exactly that. And in the commentary, Muschietti actually mentions that movie, along with Fright Night, as examples of the way a lot of 80s horror movies combine horror and comedy in a really effective way, and specifically it inspired Henry and Patrick in this movie. At the library, where Mike has been living, he offers Bill some water, but includes something else in the drink without telling him: a root. It gives him the same vision Mike had when the Shako-Piwa people helped him see where it came from. A meteorite millions of years ago, from it a being that took various evil forms until they stopped it, trapping it in a container with the ritual of Chud. Now, Bill believes. He must help Mike get the others back on board so they can complete that same ritual again. A lot of this is in the book, but when you translate it to screen and pack it all into a few-minute exposition scene, it does not work. It feels like all those flashbacks you've seen in superhero movies, where they explain the villain or MacGuffin origins. A long time ago, a being came from another dimension, and the heroes from every corner of the world combined their mother boxes and infinity stones. It's not that it can't work, but it's just so clearly the visual language of action fantasy that it further robs the movie of a scary atmosphere. It's also the old adage, explaining the thing inherently makes it less scary. There are ways around that. If I imagine a more effective version of this vision, I think Twin Peaks: The Return, Episode 8. It similarly provides the origins for a mysterious evil force, but it's done in such a surreal way. You feel like you have a sense for the answers, but can't quite grasp them. And it's just a visually interesting thing to watch, as opposed to the CGI giant monster attacks until it's trapped in a box thing we've seen so many times before. Mike and Bill return to the townhouse and find Beverly in the midst of a confession. She's been having nightmares for years of all of them dying, and now she knows the nightmares are true because one of those nightmares showed Stanley dying in a bathtub, and now that has come to pass. Mike understands it. She was in the deadlights back then, and it affected her, but it touched them all to an extent. Now it's in them like a disease, a terminal one, meaning if they don't stop Pennywise, that virus will kill them all, just like it killed Stanley. And they have to stop it now, because if they miss the window, this feeding cycle will end, and it'll go back into hibernation for another 27 years. And I hate this. You can feel the movie is really uncomfortable finding a reason for the characters to decide they will stay and fight. So it adds a weird mechanism. Well, if you don't stay and fight, you have deadlight radiation poisoning, which is going to take you out eventually anyway. And the movie doesn't convince me that it's true. It tells me that this virus killed Stanley, but did it really? By what mechanism? Did it make him extra afraid? Take away his will to live? Stanley's decision to end his own life feels totally incongruous with this explanation. And it is, because Stanley's death is from the book. This virus idea is not. As for the other characters, has the virus impacted them at all so far? It's been 27 years, and sure, they all have issues in their personal life, but none that seem abnormal or supernatural, so there's no indication of this virus progressing other than vague notions like Beverly saying, "None of us make it another 20 years," and the way it happens. When they go for a walk, there are even these lines, which feel like they were inserted after the fact.
We don't have much time. This cycle will end soon, and once it does, we're fucked.
Like they're worried the audiences won't understand why they need to kill Pennywise. I do think that instinct is right. It'll be tough to convince audiences that these adults would be willing to risk everything for an oath they barely remember. But maybe that realization came too late in the filmmaking process, because the solution should have been baked into the fundamental story. It had to convince us the characters would choose to stay of their own volition. It's not something you fix by inserting this deadlight virus idea or adding a few lines in post. To complete the ritual, first they have to remember. Mike takes them on a stroll down memory lane to the Barrens, the clubhouse. Ah, yeah, so nostalgic. The clubhouse. Remember in the first movie how they used to hang out in that clubhouse all the time? Yeah. Oh, you don't remember? Yeah, because it wasn't in the first movie. These flashbacks are rough. They feel like deleted scenes that were deleted for a reason because they don't really add anything new. But worse than that, they don't have any of the magic from the first movie. The chemistry isn't there, and it's hard to say exactly why. Part of it might be because these actors had done 2 years of growing between movies, which makes a big difference at a young age, and they tried to combat that by digitally de-aging them. Part of it might be that when they filmed the first movie, the cast spent a lot of time together while filming and developed actual chemistry. It's hard to recapture that magic going back a couple of years later. All of that makes the scene feel awkward. Then on top of that, the movie acting like this is a really familiar and important place, the clubhouse, but for some reason it wasn't mentioned in the last movie, it adds to that deleted scene feeling. In the present though, I do love this moment.
Hey, losers, time to load.
Dude, remember he used to say that shit? He did that little dance.
He's a really funny character. Possibly too funny. Now, the truth is Mike brought them to the clubhouse for a specific reason. They each need a token to sacrifice in the ritual, and since Stanley isn't here to find his, he figured they should all find it together. They choose a shower cap. Apparently, Stanley brought them into the clubhouse to keep spiders out of their hair. Another thing, shouldn't the tokens be items of significance that we remember from the last movie? For some of the characters they are, but they knew they were going to make a chapter 2, or at least knew it was a possibility, so why didn't they see this stuff in the first movie? Next, they have to split up, just like they did that summer when they fought Pennywise. On their own, they must each seek out their token. I'm loving the chemistry of this cast. What? We're going to split them up for an hour? Well, at least when they're alone, it'll be scarier, right? From the clubhouse flashback onward, you feel the movie slowing down. You start to realize why it does not work to split the story in half the way they did, with a kid half and adults half. Because as adults, most of what they do is just walk around and remember stuff. Stuff we already remember because we saw the movie. The first movie had a sense of progression in so many aspects. You're watching friendships form, kids dealing with personal struggles, like Bev finding strength to stand up to her dad, Ben getting out of his shell, dealing with a new crush, Bill reconciling with the fact that his brother is gone. On the horror mystery side, you slowly discover the nature of it, how it changes form, its history and impact on the town of Derry, how it feeds on fear and belief. Where's the progression in Chapter 2? We check in on the characters 27 years later, they come together, that takes about 40 minutes, and then the story slips between your fingers when you realize, beyond that, there's not a whole lot to keep you engaged. No mystery, none of the same dynamics from when they were kids, coming of age, making new friends. Just this setup that feels less like the organic next step in the story and more like the hands of a writer trying to craft a horror scenario. Well, time for us all to split up because things are scarier when you're alone and we can all have our own little personalized nightmares. Beverly returns to her childhood home and finds out from the woman living there now that her father is dead. She invites her in and starts acting weird, while Beverly finds her token, the poem Ben wrote to her, only she can't remember who wrote it, like in the first movie, and this is starting to feel kinda repetitive. Anyway, while the old lady leaves the room to get the cookies out of the oven and take all her clothes off, Beverly notices a photo of the lady's father, Pennywise. Then the old lady attacks her, except now she's a cartoon lady monster. And then she sees Pennywise putting on his makeup.
You haven't saved any of them.
Yeah, I know. I didn't do the ritual yet. I didn't do anything. That would be like if Joker kidnapped Jim Gordon, and then Batman was like, I'm gonna get him back. And then Joker is like, you haven't gotten him back at all. I know. I said I'm going to get him back. Are you stupid? You clown. While the old lady is acting weird in the background, especially when she's all twitchy, That is creepy. Same as the blurry old lady in the first movie in the library. Apparently, I'm discovering I have a phobia of blurry elderly. When she does the thing where she holds the smile too long while staring at Beverly, that felt a little like trying too hard. Instead of just being weird, she's trying to be weird. And then, you don't need to hear me complain about CGI monsters anymore. To me, it turns the movie more into an action adventure, like The Mummy Returns, rather than true horror. Also, Pennywise without his makeup is just a guy. Doesn't really work for me. In this section of the movie, we also see more flashbacks. In the first movie, the characters all separated for a couple of weeks, and that period of time was mostly montaged over, so these flashbacks are set during that time period. But other than Richie's flashbacks, the others add nothing new. They just serve as reminders of their traumas, but I'd argue they're generally unnecessary reminders, and especially given how awkward and lifeless the flashbacks feel, the movie would have been better off finding a way without them. Richie visits the arcade. He used to love playing Street Fighter there, and for his token for the ritual, he chooses an actual token. He remembers a time here where he earned Henry Bauer's ire by spending a little too much time with his cousin Connor, and they were having a good time together, but Connor couldn't let Henry know that.
Why are you being weird? I'm not your fucking boyfriend.
None of the others ever saw this side of Richie. None of them knew about his feelings for Eddie. But to ancient evil deities, there are no secrets.
Want a kiss, Richie?
And in the present, Pennywise taunts him again.
I know your secret, your dirty little secret.
Richie runs while the clown begs him to come back and play. You know, not only is a lot of this not scary, but even if you accept we've entered the Mummy Returns mode, I don't know why that's my go-to, but even if we're in action-adventure mode, Pennywise just isn't a credible threat. We've seen him defeated before, and they just keep running away from him unscathed. He's even just begging Richie to come back at this point. There are no stakes, because I don't believe Pennywise can defeat the losers. You could argue that we saw him kill the guy at the start and that little girl under the bleachers, so the stakes are the town. The losers aren't in it for themselves, except they are because of the deadly virus, but they aren't just in it for themselves. They want to save the people of this town, except the place feels completely empty. There's no sense there's even people around to be saved. It feels like that town in Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, where Krueger has killed basically everyone. Bill's token is his old bike, which he buys at a pawn shop from Stephen King, who's a fan of Bill's writing, mostly.
Want me to sign it for you?
Nah, I didn't like the ending.
See, in real life, that's a common criticism of King. People don't like his endings, and now he's saying it in the movie. Bill rides the bike to his old house and remembers Georgie. And wouldn't you know it, he finds Georgie in the storm drain and reaches in to grab him. Wow, he's been alive all this time, living in the sewer like Michael Myers between Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends? No, it's the clown. Come on, guys, how do you keep falling for this? Then Bill sees the kid that we met earlier at the restaurant, the one who was a fan of Richie. Bill warns that kid, if you hear voices from the sewer, stay away. But the kid doesn't hear voices from the sewer, though he does hear them from the drain in his tub, the voices of children and a clown.
I only hear voices in the tub.
What kind of voices?
Kids and other times, like
Like a clown?
This kid, it's honestly just too obvious that he was added to the story to be what's a damsel in distress but for a child? A boy in big trouble. This is their attempt to address what I just talked about. There's no town to save except this one boy, except he doesn't even feel like a real person, because it does feel like he's the only kid in town. They bump into him at the restaurant, and wouldn't you know it, it so happens he lives in Bill's old house. And other than at the restaurant, he's always alone, never with friends or parents, and he acts weird. He talks about voices that come from his drain, but in such a calm manner, not in a I'm so traumatized I can't even react properly way, but in a nothing way. This kid is unfazed by everything, like he's supposedly a big fan of Richie's stand-up, but when Richie screams in his face and shakes him, the kid barely reacts. It rings so false, because if you're a kid and you meet a celebrity that you're a fan of and the interaction goes poorly, it's traumatizing. Even more traumatizing than dead kids talking to you through a drain. I know from experience. When I was in high school, I was a big fan of the show 24, and I accidentally pissed off the actors who play Michelle Dessler and James Heller, and I was devastated after. I couldn't even bring myself to watch the show for a while. When Bill grabs the kid and starts yelling, "Don't talk to the sewer," you can't even get any expression on this kid's face other than, "You talk to the sewer? I only talk to the bath." He's literally not a character, just a Georgie stand-in to try and raise the stakes, so Bill can imprint his traumas on someone and Pennywise has a kid to threaten. There's another flashback here too, where we find out that one time Bill went to the sewer and yelled at Pennywise, "Why, Georgie? Why him of all kids?" And Pennywise answers, "Why? Because you weren't there, Billy." So what this flashback adds is that Bill feels guilty about Georgie. Yeah, he feels bad about his brother dying. Not good. Glad we cleared that up. Good thing we got this in there. Definitely worth the cost of de-aging and inflating the runtime of this nearly 3-hour movie. Ben heads to the school. Turtle. Not going to explain the whole turtle thing again. You can watch my It Chapter 1 video for that, or Google it, or maybe read a book for once. Actually, It is an awesome book. I binged it years ago. I'd wake up and read the hard copy, then in the car on the way to work, switch to audiobook, and at work, I'd have the ebook on my phone so I could sneak little reading sessions in here and there. It is addictive. It has so much that isn't in the movies. I might even read it again, though I don't really have time. You know what? Month of Terror is canceled. See you next year. At the school, Ben remembers Beverly. New kids on the block. The time they kissed. What? No, there was no kiss. Ben misread the room.
You actually thought I could like someone as fat and gross and disgusting like you?
The number of times I heard that growing up, almost verbatim. I wish that was a joke. Also, that isn't Beverly. It's Ghost Rider. Oh my God. Her hair really is Winter Fire. He runs and hides in a locker. Oh, what a dream world that would be if nerds shoved themselves into lockers. But in the locker with him, Pennywise. After his walk down Bad Memory Lane, Ben returns to the townhouse and finds Bev reading that poem. She remembers how it made her feel. She remembers kissing Bill, she thinks. What about Eddie? He goes to the pharmacy where he finds the same creepy pharmacist as 27 years ago. He remembers his mother calling him to the basement where she's tied up and the leprosy guy is down there with her, sticking his tongue down her throat. That Pennywise sure has an active imagination. Not that active, actually, because how many times are we going to go back to this well? Yes, Eddie's a germaphobe, and this diseased person is unclean. We get it. In the present, Eddie is attacked by, you'll never guess who, a guy with leprosy. Again, flashback to thing, cut to present, do same thing again. No wonder the movie is so long. But this time, Eddie fights back. He chokes the guy. Fuck you! Fuck you! Then it vomits on him while Juice Newton's Angel of the Morning plays. Though for copyright reasons I can't play that song, and for community guideline reasons I can't show the vomit. But if you really want to see people throw up on each other, this is the internet, I'm sure you can find it. And if you do find it, maybe tell me where it is, so I know where to avoid it. Gotta say, these flashbacks are getting ridiculous. It's like Happy Gilmore 2, where every time they make a reference, it flashes back to the first movie to make sure you get the reference. At least for that movie, you can understand why. It was almost 30 years between movies. But here, we all remember the leprosy guy. It's like while making the movie, they got confused and thought the first one actually came out 27 years ago and it takes place, when in reality it came out 2 years ago. Back at the townhouse, Bev and Bill remember their kiss, and they do it again. When a bloody skateboard comes down the stairs with a message, won't be there for him either. A taunt from Pennywise. Bill let Georgie die 27 years ago, and now Skateboard Kid is going to die too. Bill will not let that happen. He runs out of the house alone. He couldn't wait 2 seconds. He knows this is Pennywise's thing, breaking the group apart. And I don't even know if that kid is real. Upstairs, Eddie is attacked, not by a shape-shifting clown, but by Henry Bowers, who stabs him in the cheek. So, Eddie takes the knife out of his cheek and stabs him in the chest. I don't know the point of this. The only thing Henry theoretically adds is one more obstacle for the characters to create tension, but the scene isn't played for suspense. It's played for laughs. Henry stabs him in the mouth, and Eddie starts talking while the knife is sticking out of him, going like, Why did you do that? Ow! As if the movie needed more comedic relief. Relief from what? And why did Henry let go of the knife? Of course Eddie takes it and stabs him back. Bowers is too much of a buffoon to be a threat, and the most fun aspect, his corpse friend Patrick doesn't appear anymore. Downstairs, the others care for Richie while Henry escapes. At the festival, Bill finds the kid in a funhouse, and Pennywise eats him. Anyway, I still question if this boy even exists, because when Pennywise bites him, there's a cartoonish explosion of blood, and then they just vanish. I genuinely thought this was a trick by Pennywise, but apparently we're meant to understand that boy was real and now he's dead. Richie, meanwhile, has decided to leave town again, but on the way, he sees the synagogue and remembers Stanley's bar mitzvah, where apparently Stanley gave a rebellious speech about maybe not wanting to change so much. If today is all about forgetting the past, it isn't. I don't know why he thinks that. Maybe he doesn't want to forget. I know I'm supposed to become a man today, but I don't feel any different.
I know I'm a loser, and no matter what, I always fucking will be.
I rewound like 3 times to listen through Stanley's speech, and I genuinely don't understand it. I get why Richie needs to hear it in the present to remind him you gotta stick together with your friends. But like the rest of the flashbacks, Stanley's speech at the bar mitzvah feels so off. At the library, Mike is attacked by Henry until Richie, who decided to stay after all, comes to the rescue. He grabs a tomahawk from the artifacts display and puts it in Henry's head, finally putting this subplot out of its misery. And Richie throws up again. Before Ben, Eddie, and Beverly arrive, they call Bill and he's in distress after watching Boy on skateboard get eaten by Pennywise. Bill is not going to let anyone else get hurt. He's going to go stop this clown once and for all, alone. But they know where he's going, it's obvious. The house on Neibolt Street. They find him and declare, losers stick together. Then for some reason Eddie says,
so does somebody want to say something?
Someone did say something. They said, losers stick together. But the movie wants something more triumphant, so Bill is like, Richie said it best last time we were here. I did. I don't want to die. No, not that.
You're lucky we're not measuring dicks? No. Let's kill this fucking clown? Let's kill this fucking clown.
I did love that line in the first movie, when it was delivered a lot more organically. Inside the house, it's a lot like last time. A lot of weird stuff happens. The highlight is probably when they find Stanley's decapitated head and it turns into a spider. And it's a good litmus test, because that was terrifying in The Thing as a practical effect. Here, Finally, they head down the well. They go down deep to where it landed millions of years ago. Except Eddie is too scared until Richie reminds him. Who killed a psychotic clown before he was 14? Who stabbed Bowers with a knife he pulled out of his own face? Who married a woman 10 times his own body mass? You're braver than you think. Down they go until they reach the collision site. This is where they'll do the ritual. Mike lights a flame inside that container, and they all throw in their tokens. Then it happens. The deadlights float down from above them. They chant, turn light into dark, turn light into dark, because that's what they hope to do, snuff out his light. The lights sink into the container, and out of it comes a balloon, a big balloon. Pop, a giant Pennywise, is back, and he tells them how Mike lied. He scratched off one side of the artifact to hide what happened to the Shakopiwa when they went up against Pennywise. They were all killed. It turns out this was all a dangerous gambit by Mike. It's all about belief. Mike thought that if they believed it would work, then it would work. And of course, if they knew it failed last time, they never would have believed. Now Pennywise takes the form of a large spider, which is the closest it can get to its true physical form in a way the human mind can comprehend. The final battle is a test of wills and beliefs. Pennywise sends them all to different hells. Bill is back in the basement of his childhood home, where Georgie accuses him, "You didn't want to play in the rain with me that day. You lied. Oh, I'm too sick to go out. You lied, and I died." Between the first movie and this movie, something like 4 hours into the It saga, Georgie trying to make Bill feel guilty just falls flat. Enough already. It's another side effect of splitting the story in half. Where the book would parallel moments by jumping back and forth, when you stretch it out like this, the same beats get repeated from one movie to another, and it does feel repetitive. Eddie and Richie end up at the scary, not scary at all, and very scary doors like last time. Once again, they find Ripsum, but in the first movie where they found her upper half, this time it's her lower half. Beverly is back in the bathroom stall where she was picked on, and she's picked on again, including by Henry, who says, "Here's Johnny," for some reason. I know it's a reference to The Shining, but it feels like a weird time for such an overt reference. She starts to drown in blood, while Ben is getting buried alive in the clubhouse, until they're able to reach across nightmares and find each other. Finally, Bev remembers who wrote that poem. Meanwhile, Bill drowns zombie Georgie and tells his younger self, "It wasn't your fault." Glad Bill was able to reckon with this once and for all again. Finally, the losers are back at the battleground with Pennywise the Spider, Spider-Wise. Richie gets caught in the deadlights until Eddie holds a spike from the fence and reminds himself to believe. He throws it like a spear. That frees Richie and earns Eddie a sharp spider leg through his chest. As Eddie bleeds out, he remembers something. How he choked Pennywise at the pharmacy, how small he felt in his hand. And Mike remembers something too, what the Shako-Piwa said. All living things must abide by the laws of the shape they inhabit. If they can run to the cavern entrance and Pennywise comes after them, he'll have to shrink down to size to follow them, and then they can kill it. The plan goes sideways when Pennywise blocks their escape, but there are other ways to make someone small. Name-calling. You're just a clown. You're a weak old woman, a headless boy, imposter, a mimic, a dumb clown. Did an AI write this video? Why is your voice so monotone? Go back to recapping the MCU, timeline boy. What were we talking about? I got off track there. They keep insulting it until he's a withering nothing on the ground, a clown pancake. The losers rip out his heart and crush it in their hands. His deadlights are extinguished and he's gone. But so is Eddie. Ultimately, I find the finale pretty underwhelming. The way they defeat him this time doesn't feel different enough from how they defeated him in the first movie, so it rings as false that this time has such finality to it. It also feels way too easy a defeat for a primordial being that's been on Earth for millions of years. Like that's all it took to kill him? A few mean YouTube comments? That's a general issue with the Pennywise character, the inconsistent power level. As a giant spider, he could have easily squashed them all like bugs whenever he wanted. You get the sense that he doesn't for a grab bag of reasons, like it depends on how much they believe or how scared they are at any given moment. But why does he suddenly kill Eddie? By any of the rules we understand, Eddie should have been the least vulnerable in that moment, because it was probably the least scared he'd been the entire time. In fact, he thought he killed Pennywise. He believed he killed him. Isn't that the whole thing? I don't take issue with him killing Eddie, more that it just raises those questions of why didn't he kill anyone else, and why did he wait until now? What's so special about this moment? They leave the cavern and clean themselves off in the quarry, and afterward find the scars on their hands gone. Now, while I did find the climactic battle underwhelming, the finale does contain a couple of particularly effective moments. Richie has been the least outwardly emotional of the bunch, usually masking his fear and feelings with humor. To see him drop that when he cries over Eddie's body and begs that they can still save him when the others know he's dead. And then in the quarry, they're all doing the Richie thing, joking about Eddie, how he would have hated this, cleaning themselves in dirty water. But the scene inverts things. Instead of Richie joking while everyone else is serious, they're all joking and he can't bring himself to their level. He breaks down in tears. But once they comfort him, he's back.
Thank you. I don't have my glasses on, so I don't know who you people are, but thank you very much.
Now they all leave Derry again, but this time they don't forget. They remember each other. They keep in touch. Ben and Beverly even do more than that. Mike finally leaves the library. Hell, he leaves Derry altogether. And they all get a letter from Stanley, sent before he took his own life, explaining why he did it. He knew they all had to be united, but he also knew that he couldn't do it. He was too afraid. So he made the only logical move and took himself off the board. He tells them not to be afraid to be who they want to be proud, and if you find someone worth holding on to, never let them go. He asks them to swear on all this, that they'll be brave, follow their path, and always be losers. I hated that letter. It feels like the movie trying to weirdly justify what he did. It feels as awkward as that bar mitzvah speech.
I know what this must seem like, but this isn't a suicide note.
But isn't it exactly that? And he goes on to almost say, don't worry, the only reason I did it is because I knew I would drag you guys down, so it's okay. And the language of the movie, the music, the bittersweet note it ends on, almost presents it like it was the right thing to do. He had to do it, like it was a tactical move against Pennywise. It's even more awkward after the movie told us earlier that it was deadlight poisoning which made him do this. None of it makes any sense. In terms of painting his death in a positive light, implying it was the right thing to do, I have to believe it was not intended to be that way in the movie. Just a weird collision of awkward word choice, clashing with music and editing, emphasizing the more positive aspects of the ending. The losers keeping in touch, Ben and Beverly getting together, etc. In any case, it's an awkward ending to an awkward movie. It's definitely a challenging book to adapt. I think what killed Chapter 2 was the choice to split the story in half based on chronology. And you know it's bad if I'm saying that. Timelines are my job. I love chronological order. But if you're going to take that approach, a literal adaptation doesn't work, because the book was not designed for chronological presentation. For this approach to work, I think you would have had to have made significant changes and make some bold choices in the adaptation. Or you can try adapting the story as is with the parallel storylines, then just Lord of the Rings style, end one partway through and pick up where you left off in the next movie. Anyway, hopefully the new prequel show is good, and if it is, maybe I'll talk about it. Month of Terror continues tomorrow with The Lost Boys.